Hello, everyone. I'm Matt Williamson at Williamson NFL. Give me a follow on Twitter. As always, day after the game, we're going to dig into this one pretty deep and then put it to bed, as the Steelers should do. Get on to Ravens week, which is the most important thing, and I can't stress that enough. And along those lines, I have a little hunch that all your injured Steelers, including Mr. Watt and Mr. Pickens, should be good to go for Ravens week. Makes me think that, the guys that they held out, if it were the Super Bowl, I have a hunch they could have played. Now, I don't know. I'm not breaking any news here. No one's told me any scoop. That's just kind of my take on things. As we do day 2 of recap, we're going to start with snap count. Insanely enough, the Steelers offense only played 43 snaps. So, as you can imagine, the top Eagles defenders played a high percentage of those snaps because they never really got tired. So, anyway, the entire starting offensive line played all 43. Wilson was out for 42. He only went out for 1 snap. Jefferson and Austin are leading the way at 35 snaps apiece amongst non-quarterback / starting O-linemen. That speaks volumes there, to be honest with you. I mean, if your top 2 skill guys in terms of snap counts in a game against a big-time Super Bowl contender are Van Jefferson and Calvin Austin, who I think has had a really good year, that's problematic. Pat Freiermuth comes in at 30 snaps, Warren at 23, Washington at 19. Boy, these numbers are just so small. Mike Williams at 15, very nondescript snaps. Najee only played 14 snaps of football on Sunday. Crazy. Michael Pruitt, 12. Skournick, 10. Scotty Miller, 10. Cordell Patterson, 6. Connor Hayward, 6. Justin Fields, 1. They didn't play a lot of offensive football, needless to say. But, and you flip the script, Minka, Queen, and Porter all played all 80 of the defensive snaps. Slight difference. KZ played 64. Obviously, an injury played a role in that. Give Cam credit. He's out there for 58. Benton for 55. His snap counts are going up. I think that's a positive thing for sure. Watt 53, and of course there was an injury there late. Highsmith for 50. Pierre for 49, also injury related. Landon Roberts at 49. Lowry at 37. Kind of growing into more and more of a Lowry fan, by the way. Herbig at 32. Sutton at 31. Peyton Wilson 30. Preston Smith 28. Montravius Adams 28. Loudermilk 26. Beanie and Dante Jackson, 24 apiece, and 1 for Killebrew. Not the most telling snap count conversation we've had on, after the game. One side of the ball was out there a ton. The other side was out there hardly at all. We all know why. Wasn't pretty. So, BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for online betting. From the earliest odds in-game live betting, BetOnline provides you with all the action and the ability to watch the games as they happen. With the largest selection of odds on everything from football, NBA, and college basketball, NHL to UFC and MMA. Head to BetOnline today to get on the action with America's most trusted site for online wagering. BetOnline, the game starts here. As usual, I got a bunch of notes and observations. This one's probably a lot less in-depth than others because pretty one-sided. And that snap count thing might be all you need to know about how this game went. But the Steelers only snapped the ball 11 times in the second half. 11 plays in the second half. And to put that in perspective, as mentioned, the Steelers' 43 offensive snaps. That was tied for the fewest in a game by any team this season. No one has snapped the ball less than 43 times in a game this year. Giants, Patriots, terrible teams. Pretty telling. All right, let's talk a little bit about Russell Wilson. Finished this game 14 of 22 for 128 yards and a touchdown when facing 4 or fewer pass rushers. The Eagles defense blitzed Wilson just once on 26 dropbacks, making their third game when they blitzed just one time or fewer, which is crazy. Most by any defense, of course. Third game this year, they've blitzed one time or fewer. Wilson scrambled for 3 yards and a first down on his only blitz faced in that game. Okay. He had an average time to throw of 2.38 seconds, his quickest in a game since week 2 of 2019. 2.38 is like last year, Ben, insanely quick. And you're having to do that without any blitz at all. With one blitz, it's not like, oh, blitz hot, get it out. No, we got to get this thing out now. That's one of the roots of the problem. There's no question about that. 0 10-plus yard runs by the Steelers in this game. 0. All right, let's get into a little bit of slight positive news here. I do think Freiermuth's play, usage, production, still trending upwards. And now, hopefully, probably, you throw Pickens in that mix and his less is asked of him, but you still get the same quality of play. And I think the same is true for Austin. I think he's a keeper. I think he's had a quality year. I think we're happier about him now than when the year started. He has value. He had a big spike in usage in this game. Here's a little nugget I found on him for the season. His 1.68 yards per route run when lined up out wide is second best on the team besides Pickens. I know that he is a heavy slot guy, but he is very capable outside the numbers too. So really going forward, if you really want to get the best players on the field, your 2 receiver sets have to be Pickens and Austin. Period. End of sentence. Yeah. Obviously a route here and there. They can change them. But he had 2.71 yards per route run against the Eagles, which is phenomenal. I mean, it really is. One other positive, I thought the Steelers did a pretty good job against Jalen Carter. He didn't wreck the game. He's very capable of wrecking the game. He didn't wreck the game. So, I mean, I'm not reaching for good things. I'm just discovering some. Other side of the ball. Obviously, the Steelers limited Barkley. I mean, he was on pace to break the all-time single season record, of course. 65 yards on 19 carries. His 3.4 yards per carry was nearly half his usual. And he did have one 22-yarder. Other than that, he had 43 yards on 18 attempts, which is 2.4 per carry. Now, I'm not big on, let's take his best play out of the equation. What if we do that for Austin? All of a sudden, his yards per route run's a lot different. But he got free on one run to some degree. Other than that, they did keep him bottled up very, very well. And his 31.6% success rate kind of reflects that. I mean, that's not great at all. 38.8% of his runs were stopped at or behind the line of scrimmage. You'll take that all day long. That's his lowest success rate and highest stuff rate in a game of the season. So they did the best job of limiting his success while also creating negative plays. Again, there are some positive things. That is very, very real, and that showed up while watching the game. He only averaged 0.37 yards before contact for rush. Very, very low, because he came into this game with the best yards before contact and the best yards after contact. Not against the Steelers. In the second half, 58.3 of Barkley's runs came against a stacked box, and he only had a long run of 9 yards. But overall in this game, they didn't stack the box as much as you think. If you really start looking at snap counts or people in the box per snap, it wasn't as heavy as you quite think. So they did this pretty much on their own, winning one-on-one matchups, bottling him up, tackling him. They had other tackling issues, but tackling Barkley wasn't the problem in this game. And that was their priority coming in. I'm not making excuses for a bad game, but I'm just trying to find some positives because they did exist. Now, Hurts, he was 9 of 11 for 102 yards and a touchdown on third downs, turning 8 of those completions into first downs. And the one he didn't convert left the Eagles with a 4th and 1, which he converted on a 4th down QB sneak. So they were 1 short. This was a quote from Mike Tomlin I thought was very evident. There were several possession downs on defense where we had opportunities to tackle ball carriers in the flat, and we missed those tackles. Now, I can't cite one example but there was a lot of instances, hypothetical. 3rd and 8, they throw it in the flat for a 2-yard pass downfield. Someone overruns a tackle, and a lot of it seemed like over-aggressiveness. Get away from them, first down on a play that should be a 3-yard gain. Way too much of that in this game. And it wasn't Barkley jumping over people backwards either. I thought Watt was great before his injury. And tough circumstances, playing against a great player in Lane Johnson. And I thought Watt's first half was a very high quality half of performance. I almost didn't bring this up. And I quote Pro Football Focus a lot, so I'm not just going to cherry pick when I like it, when I don't. But I guess by their numbers, someone told me this, that they didn't credit Lane Johnson giving up any pressures in this game, like 0. That's not what I saw. I mean, I'm not saying Watt whipped them, but that was at least a draw. There was no chance that when they were alone, he did not allow a pressure. Speaking of which, Landon Dickerson is an excellent left guard. You'd love him. He's a big, mauling, 330-pound masher. But he got hurt, and then Steen came in, the kid from Bama. And I'll say Cam destroyed Steen. If you just watch their one-on-one matchups, Cam whipped up on Steen. Speaking of the defense, Dante Jackson, it's easy to blame the problems on his injury, but I thought he was pretty bad before his injury. And we'll get to some things here, too. So Hurts was 25 of 32 for 290, 2 touchdowns in this game. But the stuff against man coverage, I think, is a big picture issue we're going to have to talk a lot about with the Steelers going forward. He was 11 for 13 for 138 and 2 touchdowns against man, resulting in a season-high 71% success rate on man dropbacks. He was also effective on the ground, gaining 30 rushing yards on 5 design runs, while logging another 3 carries for 12 yards on scrambles, as well as 4 carries for 4 yards and a touchdown as a running quarterback. So he had more success running than just about any quarterback really has against him. But I think that man coverage stuff really needs to be discussed. And I'm not trying to really pick on Jackson, but I think the Steeler team has one man coverage corner when everyone's healthy. And maybe Trice can be that guy. That's an incomplete grade. Who knows? It's definitely not Sutton. It's not Bishop. And folks, it's not Jackson. And that really limits what they can do schematically. And I thought they played too much man in this game. And it hurt them. And because their receivers are awesome against man. All right. In the first half, Steelers brought blitz on 44% of his dropbacks. And he carved it up. I give him credit. Sometimes you got to tip your cap. 8 of 11 for 92 yards, and both his touchdowns were against blitz. Now, a lot of that was blitz with man coverage. So are we blaming the blitz or are we blaming the coverage? I think we blame the coverage because Porter's their only man coverage corner. In the first half, he averaged 2.74 seconds to throw and was in a really good rhythm and comfort, I thought. And on throws with 2.5 seconds, he was 14 of 17 for 157 yards with a really good EPA and success rate. That was the best he's been. So Here's what the numbers tell you, and absolutely reflects on this too, is they wanted him to play in rhythm, be quick. We're going to blitz you. Now, part of the problem with the blitz was they're not good enough a man, but he processed much better than he usually does. And the strategy is a good one, but that doesn't mean that it worked. You know what I mean? So they backed off blitzing in the second half, only went to 15%, but that worked better. Now, you wouldn't think the second half would be better, but they were pressuring him more, and then he held the ball for 3.63 seconds in the second half without the blitz, which in hindsight is something we talked about going into this game. You want him holding the ball in the pocket, padding it, second guessing things. And he did a lot more of that in the second half without blitz than making him think quick, which he did well. Now, this is a fantasy note, but I think all of you are smart enough to realize fantasy points comes from production. So he scored 28.1 standard fantasy points. That's the first time, 28.1, that's the first time a quarterback has scored more than 20 fantasy points against the Steelers all year. So it's somewhat of a one-off, guys. You know, I'm not trying to candy coat it. He played well. They didn't. A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith had 11 and 12 targets against the Steelers. No other Eagle had more than 3. Yards per route run, 2.82 for Browns, 2.87 for Smith. I think you can make an argument that they were the best two players on the field yesterday or Sunday. Yeah, Brown and Smith were outstanding, and they are man killers. Steelers don't have the man coverage guys to deal with it. They didn't allow a lot of big plays overall, but again, tackling in space was highly suspect. And Brown and Smith combined for 115 yards after the catch. They weren't on 80-yarders, but they consistently made a man miss, etc. I found this interesting too. With Elliott inactive, Minkah aligned nearly 4 yards closer to the line of scrimmage on average than in any other game this season. 4 yards closer to the ball on average in all those snaps is a big deal. He was a deep safety on just 34% of his snaps. That's a really low number for him. That's less than half his rate of any other game this season. Instead, he aligned as a slot corner on 22 snaps, a box safety 20 snaps, and as an outside corner on 9 snaps, all of which were season highs. He had logged just 37 snaps as a box safety, 22 snaps as an outside corner, and 38 snaps as a slot corner all season before this. So total different Minkah usage. Can't say it went great, but I do think it's noteworthy. That drive, that 21-yard play drive, or 21 play drive, 88 yards, 9th longest fourth quarter drive by any team in 20 years. 20 years. That's insane to me. Steelers had 5 minutes and 50 seconds time possession on just their 2 second half drives. This was a low time of possession for Eagles opponents and for the Steelers offense, of course, in the second half since the year 2000 for both those teams. Lowest for any team in the second half of any game since 2022 in the entire league. You do have to be concerned that having the defense, you definitely have to be concerned that having the defense play 71 snaps on a short week could take its toll. They do have 3 games in 11, and they have to go to Baltimore in a short week. That definitely could be an issue. But my hunch is this team's not going to have a hard time getting wound up to play the Ravens in Baltimore. Back to Pro Football Focus, just a couple little notes here. Their 3 highest graded players were linebacker Nakobe Dean, number 1, TJ, number 2, and their edge defender Nolan Smith. I thought he played a really good game, number 3. And they gave Nolan Smith their player of the game. He notched a career high with 4 quarterback pressures, including 1 sack. Also played 40-plus snaps for the 3rd straight week for him. So he's starting to come into his own. A couple other things here. Just some stats to finish this thing off and put this thing to bed. Average plays per drive was 8.9 versus 5.3. Average yards per drive was 39.9 to 14.8. Points per drive, 2.7 to 1.3. Red zone possessions, 6 to 2. Red zone plays, 23 to 9. Red zone touchdowns, 3 to 1. Both had a red zone field goal. So, enough of that. I mean, I think all of that tells the story of what we watched on Sunday. And most importantly, got to go beat the Ravens and go from there. All right, everyone. I think tomorrow will be mailbag day. If you want to start getting me some of those, that's cool. And I am digging in the Ravens as always. On to the Baltimore.